Well, hello, folks. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets, and we do it from a neoclassical perspective each time, asking ourselves just the one question: what happened today? What might it tell us about the coming days? I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube under the channel L.A. Little. You can subscribe anytime content is pushed. You'll get a notification. Also do a show on Sunday evening, and that show takes a broader view. You definitely want to check in on that one. If you're a member, of course, you know I do other shows. Those shows, members only, weekend broadcasts where we kind of dive into really what's happening, how we ought to be positioned, and so forth. If you're not a member, you might think about it. Just come to the Get Started button, click it. If you want to look at what these things are, you trade with LA, our tools, so forth, just click on those as well. Come over to the site, TA Today. As far as what happened today, let's take a look at it, see what we got here. The action continues to be in Europe. A lot of pressure there. That pressure mainly coming off of, I wouldn't say it's all associated with it, but mainly coming off the Volkswagen scandal. A huge depreciation in price on that stock. And it's spread to others as others are starting to be feared. And I don't know if you've been trading long enough, but and this is not a direct comparison, but I remember back when the Enron scandal first got started. It took that whole company down and went bankrupt. I don't know that this is going to go that direction, but certainly you've got some huge damage being done, not only to the stock, but to the sector, down 2%. We're going to look at these charts here a little bit later. Nikkei, this is the evening quote. It was down a good chunk today. It's up 120, it looks like, this evening. Hang Seng down 206. And then we move to the Dow, S&P. The Dow was, only down 78. It's down as much as 200, 250 points today. NASDAQ, NDX, so forth. They all were down much larger than this. The gains intraday were fairly significant. They were all down almost 2% at one point. Bonds were up, had a nice little spike, although they sold off too. We had Yellen with a speech tonight talking about the Fed's going to raise rates, and I don't know if it really is or not, but they sure keep talking about it. Gold spikes up today. I suspect the dollar is going to gain on that rate cut talk by Yellen, and then we're going to see these gains start to evaporate again in the commodity space. That's what I'd expect. Let's pop over to the charts and see what we got there. If we start with Europe, I think that's where we ought to start. And the reason for that is Europe's coming after the lows. And now this is the lows from, about 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, I guess. I guess it hasn't been that long. It looks like about 4 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, 5 weeks. So the big move down. Let's review how we got here, right? So we got a range trade going on for a long time. Europe had been drifting down already, and then you had this spike down. That was a big spike here. It was a spike in the U.S. Remember that Mad Monday when everything fell out of bed? High volume low. Comes all the way back up to try to do the retest regen. Doesn't quite get there. Drifts back down, right? And now you start having escalation as you're coming back down. Volume's picking up. But if you want to be bullish on Europe, what you want to see tomorrow is you want to see them test that low. They're not going to have the volume, most likely. And you're going to get a reversal and some sort of a bounce out of this. As we talked about last night, you already have more than a one-to-one ABCD extension to the downside, right? So this thing has come down quite a bit more without any kind of respite. Once you get that kind of action, you've come a long way in a very fast period of time, and you got a high volume low here that's going to be hard to knock out. Most bullish scenario that you can think of right now is you test it, you have less volume, you flip around, you take it back the other way. So that's what I would be looking for this evening, or actually in the morning. If we look at the French market, the next largest one, that was also coming down to the same thing. I don't think they'll get to their lows though, so they'll probably leave lows at the bottom. In the worst case, right? I'm going to go back to the DAX. The worst case scenario, if you're bullish, is that this thing comes down here to test it, right? So you come down here to test it, which is what they've done, and you don't get there, right? That would be the worst case scenario. And just to make certain I'm not, because I just drew that line, it looks pretty close. 93.38 was the low. 93.62, yeah, so they missed it by about 24 points. So the worst case is you don't test and you simply go back. Why is that worse? Well, because then that leaves this high volume low. You get some sort of a bounce. You set up another ABCD structure, right? And then you come hammering after it again, and then you break it. So you really want to see that test take place, get it out of the way, be done with it. That's Europe. That's the way they look. If we move over to Asia, Hong Kong sells off again, but nothing big there. Let me see what the Shanghai looks like. I think they were up last night, and yeah, they're slightly up. Again, I'm having a hard time reading anything out of that market at this particular time, so I'm not paying all that much attention to it. I was looking at the Indian market a little bit earlier. This one actually looks buyable. I'm gonna pull a weekly chart over. You know, it comes down, has less volume, gets under back over. It may make one more spill here, but it doesn't look too bad to me. It's coming back up. You know, the real case is the retest. And so what you'd love to see, right, in any of these markets you want to buy, is you'd love to see that test, you know, as it comes back up. You'd love to see it come and work to the sideways, right? Change this back to sideways. And how you do that, you get over it and stay over it for a couple bars. And then the drift back down after that is the one that you buy. You put your stops up underneath somewhere, right? And you're shooting back for your highs. So that's the kind of scenario you want to see develop. I don't know if it will lay out that way. And you'd like to see the rest of the world not doing so bad. So that would be, you know, I don't know if that's a tall order or not, but that's kind of the scenario you'd like to see. Let me pop over to the U.S. markets. Let's see what kind of action we got there. Because of those big reversals, I think we're going to have long tails to start with. So let's see what they look like. And we do. We had some volume. And, okay, so we break a low. So we get a swing point low. This one here, right? We break up underneath it. So we close under it. So that breaks a swing point low. Trend was sideways. So now trend is down again. That's not a particularly good thing, but it's not the end of the world either. So I think that a lot of times, and I wrote this, I've written this several places, a lot of times when you get, especially on a straight line move, when you get a break of a swing point low like this, you usually get some sort of a bounce right afterwards. You got this long tail, right, telling you that by the end of the day, the buyers were taking control. And you're coming right back into, and I'm going to expand this over, you're coming right back into the key areas. So if this tomorrow is able to trade, you know, back, say, up into this area and hold, whether it's intraday or end of day, you know, the odds of this thing working its way back higher are fairly well, are fairly good. So I could certainly see us getting a bounce out of this now. And if I think about it from an ABCD standpoint now, this is going to be the key resistance this time on the way up. And if you, let's just assume this thing can bounce all the way back up there, right? Then you could set up the next leg potentially, right, to go test those lows and try to break them out. And if we pull over to the weekly chart, the lows that we're talking about are 1867. The ones over here in October are 1820. So I don't think we'd have the juice to get down there yet. But, you know, as I've said before, I said on the weekly show, you know, what you're looking for is you're looking for this structure to actualize. And the way it's going to work out, if it does, is you're going to see those nested ABCD structures develop on the daily charts, right, to help work this thing down on a weekly chart. So, you know, we're not out of the woods yet, I guess is what I would be saying, but it does look like, at least at this index, we're going to try to get a bounce. Let's take a look at the other ones. So the NASDAQ, that low was 47.46. We close at 47.34, so we break it, and we have higher volume. But look at what happened. So, I think we even talked about this last night. This was the key area. What does it do? It comes into it, holds it. Compare the volumes. They're not there. This thing's going to go back the other way. Let's look at the NDX and see what that one looks like. Same setup, does exactly the same thing, trades into that high of the low. What is it, 41, almost 42, and the lows today was 41. Yeah, so it traded right into it and got rejected. So a complete turnaround on the daily chart. This one's going to try to trade higher also did a hammer reversal. We're going to get a push back up tomorrow. Now, here's the thing that would be a nice trade if it sets up this way. You've got Europe wanting to trade lower, right? Wanting to test those lows. If Europe hem-haws around and doesn't do it by the time the U.S. opens, you may see some soft U.S. prices to start the day, which would give one the opportunity to actually get long some indexes on the assumption that they're going to make that trade back the other side. So I'm giving you just what I give my members on a daily basis, and I'll be viewing it in the morning and giving them a morning broadcast on what I'm seeing. But I'm giving you the kind of setups, that I see on a daily basis and try to give them. And you can see this one, how it's set up on the daily charts. That may be the scenario that ends up happening. So you get under, back over, you get into these big bars, you reject them, same thing. So every one of the indexes is telling me the same thing tonight. This market's going to try to bounce tomorrow. And that's despite Europe. And if you remember, last night, Europe was acting like it might want to try and bounce. And I said, you might not want to believe that. Well, sure enough, you didn't, because it headed straight back down. Let me pop over to the Ox markets. I'm curious as to what that dollar looks like, because they tried to sell it down today. We'll start with the euro, because that should reverse tonight on the Yellen speech. And yeah, it is. It's probably going to reverse. So the FXE trades higher. Yeah, kind of looks like it. So you get a bad candle at the end of the day. It looks to me like this thing's trying to work lower still, and you're getting nested ABCD structures to do it. So check out how this is working. You get an A point here, right? B point there, and that says it wants to trade down to this area, right? So that's kind of the scenario which would take it back and test these lows. Then you get a bounce up, right, which takes this back up higher, right? So now instead of it being down here, right, it ends up changing, and so the change brings it back up to this spot. So now you're coming right into these lows instead of breaking them, right, if that structure ends up happening. So what's the best way to make it happen? Well, you nest some more ABCD structures inside of it, and here's one now trying to take place, right? And where does that one take you to? Almost to the same spot. Now you've got two of them down here. This is on the FXE. Looks to me like it's going to try to trade back into this area. Let's pop over and look at the yen. That's the other big one in here. And that one's still hanging up there. And then finally, let me see what the British pound looks like. And that was at the lows. So it looks to me like the dollar is going to probably rally. That's probably going to hurt gold. Gold had a big day up. Gold's got a nice spike with some okay volume and gets into this bar. So tomorrow will be a key day on gold. And tomorrow's Friday, actually. So gold makes some big moves sometimes on Fridays. It likes that for some reason. That's the bar. It's into the bar. Tomorrow, if you're a gold bug, you want it to see it stay up here. You don't want to see it get back underneath this price point. And so that's what I'd be watching for gold tomorrow, because if it can hang up there, it can go after the highs. And let's see, I want to take a quick look at the GDX while I'm here, because I know they were moving big today. And once more, it looks like short covering probably. Let's look at the dollar now and just see what that one looks like. Yeah, got a nice hammer reversal. This one's going to go after that swing point high. Finally, let's go over to sectors and see if there's anything different there to tell us. I suspect they're going to tell us the same things. They're going to have long tails just like we saw everywhere else. But let's check it out and see. So IBB comes down, has volume, it's deep into this bar. Okay, so this looks more like you can bounce, right? But now you're going to find resistance back up here. So that one, yeah, I can bounce, but I don't know how much you want to believe it. A little reversal here on a test, not much volume. That one actually looks like it's going to trade higher. That's the ITB, Home Builders Transports. Into the bar, not much there. Yeah, that one doesn't really tell me anything. Semiconductors. And that one had volume on the way down. So this one's kind of interesting because on the semis, right, you're coming into this area and you're pushing it with some volume. And so that to me says, okay, even though you got the hammer reversal, you can bounce, you're probably going to come back out here and test it again. So that one's not out of the woods. And the reason I look at these is because I want to know, is the downside done? And it doesn't look like it is. Here's the XLB. Caterpillar got hammered today. This one comes down, doesn't have the volume, right? Kind of a different situation. But unfortunately, just like we were just talking about on the DAX earlier, didn't test it either. You want to see it test it. You want to see it get down there, test it, tell you that it's not going to be able to break it out. Energies, that one's still under these bars, but looks like it can bounce. Broke a swing point low already. I don't pay much attention to energy until it shows me something other than down, and right now it still hasn't. Financials. Okay, so financials try to break the swing point low. We got 2250. We get down, under, stay under, so you break it. And like we talked about elsewhere, this is probably going to get a little bounce out of it and so forth. Okay, so as I'm going through these, what it's telling me is kind of what I expected, and that is that you're going to see a bounce, but it's going to be a bounce, just a bounce. Let's look at the XLP. That one actually looks okay. Let's look at technology. And that one actually held up. So yeah, we're going to bounce. Discretionary held up. And these have been the strongest ones. The XLV probably under pressure still, and it was. And hasn't broken though. Has volume, hasn't broken. So expect these markets to bounce tomorrow. That's the way they're set up. That's on a Friday, a good setup on a Friday for a bounce. And that's the way it looks tonight. So I will be out, of course, tomorrow, and I'll check back with you on Sunday night. That's it for tonight. Thanks for joining me. Have a great one, and I'll see you next time. Have a great one. Good night.